New Café in New York City DM'd me saying they love my content and they want me to go in and try their new French toast. I gave them my rate and they said they didn't have money for it, so I told them that I'd go in and try it, and if I like it, I might post a few stories. I asked if they could accommodate a guest and add another food item and a drink, and they said they couldn't afford it.
Did you miss the part where they said they couldn't afford this before you showed up with your friend? And if they're cheap for not compensating your $5 French toast, what does that make you for not just fucking paying for it? I have 3 times as many followers as this guy, and I have never once even thought to ask for free stuff.
I wanted to clarify what happened and tell the whole story because a lot of people didn't watch the original video and just saw his clips and jumped to a conclusion. I will be looking at my notes because I'm not good at speaking and I don't want to leave out any information. And I do want to say that I was dramatic when I said that it was the worst experience. But what I meant to say is that has never happened to me before in the few years I worked with brands and companies.
The most disgraceful and jaw-dropping moment in this entire saga was not merely that an influencer with over 123,000 TikTok followers and 129,000 Instagram fans was denied a simple plate of French toast and a drink, but that he transformed this denial into a spiraling public scandal, recording a lengthy video where he angrily trashed the reputation of a cafe, mocked the food without ever tasting it, and wielded his social media platform as a weapon to imply that they were unfit to run a business. What is striking is the scale of his outrage compared to the size of the incident. He demanded an extra plate and a drink for a guest, items totaling barely $5, and when told that the cafe could not provide it, he responded with a full campaign of indignation. That small rejection, one that could have been easily resolved with patience or humility, was magnified into a cultural trial about entitlement, exploitation of businesses, and the hollow currency of social media clout. It was not just a denial of food, it became a case study in the dangers of ego unchecked by accountability. On trial today is Vincent, known on TikTok as It's Vincent, a mid-tier content creator who built his persona around lifestyle, reviews, and curated glimpses of luxury made approachable. With a combined following that exceeds 250,000 across TikTok and Instagram, Vincent is far from obscure. He exists in that space of influence where smaller brands see opportunity for exposure and creators see opportunities for free products, collaborations, and elevated status. He is representative of the growing class of influencers who operate in the middle tier, not celebrities, not unknown, and who often feel entitled to perks, recognition, and special treatment in return for visibility. The charges against him, as leveled in the court of public opinion, are not trivial. They include manipulation of narrative to suit his ego, weaponizing his audience against a business, entitlement to free goods under the guise of collaboration, exaggeration of grievances into public outrage, and an attempt to damage the reputation of an establishment over a $5 refusal. These charges are both specific to Vincent's behavior and emblematic of the larger influencer culture that thrives on dramatizing small inconveniences. At first glance, Vincent portrayed himself as the victim of a broken promise. He alleged that the cafe in New York City reached out, invited him to sample their new French toast, agreed on a date, and then blindsided him by refusing service when he arrived.
Content and they want me to go in and try their new French toast. I gave them my rate and they said they didn't have money for it, so I told them that I'd go in and try it, and if I like it, I might post a few stories. I asked if they could accommodate a guest and add another food item and a drink, and they said they couldn't afford it. I should have known there was going to be an issue when I heard that, but I did not catch the red flag. We confirmed the date, and on the day I went in, I told the staff that I came in because I was invited. The barista walks to the back to talk to the owner, and then she comes back and tell me that I should have came yesterday. I showed her the messages I had with the cafe, and I clearly said I was supposed to come in today at 2 p.m.
For his audience, this painted a story of arrogance and betrayal on the cafe's part. Yet as evidence emerged in the form of screenshots, counterclaims, and third-party analysis, the reality proved far more complex. This was not simply an influencer wronged. It was a confrontation between expectation and reality, between entitlement and boundaries, and between perception and truth. What might have remained a minor misunderstanding quickly escalated into a viral spectacle, amplifying broader questions about influencer ethics and the fragile balance between creators and the businesses they engage with. Exhibit A. Vincent posted his now deleted video where he recounted the worst experience ever, holding nothing back as he said, "I wish I had known there was going to be an issue when they say they couldn't afford my guest's meal, but I didn't catch the red flag. I came, I showed the messages, and still they told me no. And all I wanted was one French toast and one drink. That's all."
She goes back to the kitchen to talk to the owner, and when she gets back, she tells me that they can't serve me. Mind you, I came in just to try a French toast and one drink. They couldn't even afford a second French toast or a drink that would have cost them maybe like $5. I asked them what's the reason since it's already been confirmed and they didn't give me an explanation, so I just walked out and went to another place. I thought I'd be nice and do them a favor and commute 40 minutes to go try this stupid French toast. This turned out to be one of the worst experiences I've ever had.
He repeated this complaint with heavy emphasis, stressing how humiliating it felt to be turned away after, as he described, making time in his busy schedule, driving 40 minutes across the city and presenting proof of the agreed date. He went further by dramatizing the ordeal, mentioning the money spent on transportation, the effort of preparing his appearance for content creation, and the lost opportunity to share what he believed could have been a viral, feel-good story about supporting a new cafe. He cast himself as a creator trying to uplift a cafe by providing exposure, framing the denial as not only a personal insult, but also a rejection of his perceived generosity and status as an influencer. What he omitted, however, was significant. He did not tell viewers that he had previously attempted to negotiate for more than one menu item to be comped. Nor did he acknowledge that the cafe had already explained their limited budget. He left out that the cafe was clear about offering only a single French toast and drink, presenting instead the version where he was blindsided by the counter. Stripping away these details, Vincent reframed the incident as evidence of incompetence and hostility rather than a simple refusal to expand an argument. What matters here is not the denial itself, but the disproportionate reaction. Vincent's language, delivery, and tone elevated a small miscommunication into a narrative of betrayal. He used dramatic pauses, exaggerated expressions, and sharp rhetorical questions, turning a scheduling mishap into an emotional performance. He claimed the cafe wasted his time and left him undervalued. Yet, beneath his indignation lay earlier negotiations where he pressed for more than was offered. This exhibit demonstrates the inflated ego of entitlement. What could have been dismissed as an everyday scheduling mishap was inflated as an accusation, broadcast to an audience of over 100,000, many of whom were encouraged to see as a wronged hero rather than a frustrated diner. Vincent's outrage was less about the food and more about wounded pride, exposing how influencers often conflate access with status and how swiftly that conflation can turn into performance when ego collides with rejection, missed opportunity, and the fear of losing face online. Exhibit B. The story took a sharp turn when another creator, Daddy's Snacks, who boasted over 400,000 followers, entered the conversation. He ridiculed Vincent in a tone that was part humor and part serious critique, saying, "You're crying about a $5 French toast like the cafe committed a crime when you were the one trying to exploit them."
My God, you guys, a small business wouldn't give me free stuff and I'm literally shaking. But seriously, did you miss the part where they said they couldn't afford this before you showed up with your friend? And if they're cheap for not compensating your $5 French toast, what does that make you for not just fucking paying for it? I have 3 times as many followers as this guy and I have never once even thought to ask for free stuff. And before you tell me the cafe shouldn't have messaged him asking him for promo, maybe he shouldn't claim to be doing this to support small businesses.
Unlike Vincent, who relied on emotion and indignation, Daddy Snacks reached for facts and proof. He did not simply react with mockery. He set out to verify the story. He contacted Brioche NYC directly and secured screenshots of the conversations between Vincent and the cafe. These receipts provided a chronological window. They show that Vincent initially proposed a $4,000 rate for a single promotional video, presenting this figure as his standard price point, while adding that reposts across Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube shorts could be included at no additional cost. For a small cafe, this number was astronomical, and the team politely declined, citing budget limitations.
With me to address an influencer who accused me of lying. I posted a video about how this guy threw a New York City small business under the bus because they wouldn't give him free food. He and his followers blasted me, accusing me of misrepresenting the situation. I am absolutely petty as fuck, so I reached out to the cafe myself for screenshots. I'm gonna post them here. You can pause the video to read them, but I will summarize.
Vincent then shifted his stance, countering with a more casual agreement. He would stop by in exchange for a French toast and an Instagram story. The cafe's response was clear and respectful. They explained that because of their limited resources, they could only afford to comp one meal. At this point, the expectations should have been set. Yet even after this boundary was spelled out, Vincent still arrived expecting accommodations for 2 people, a move that implied he ignored or disregarded the cafe's earlier words. These receipts dismantled Vincent's framing piece by piece. They revealed a negotiation where the cafe had been transparent and consistent, while Vincent's pivot exposed opportunism rather than generosity. What he presented to his followers as betrayal was in reality misaligned expectations, which he twisted into a narrative of villainy. The cafe said no, a firm but fair no, and Vincent transformed that no into an act of insult, staging it as though the business had intentionally embarrassed him. Exhibit B underscores the double standard in influencer marketing. Businesses that are upfront about their constraints are often shamed for honesty and restraint, while influencers who fail to get their way twist the transparency into ammunition, weaponizing indignation to punish those who do not bend to their demands. Exhibit C. Once Daddy Snacks shared the evidence, the internet jury responded with vigor. Comments piled up across platforms. "You are mad over French toast?" And "Imagine trying to ruin a cafe over a free meal." The comment sections became arenas of ridicule, with viewers joking that Vincent should have simply paid the small cost himself, and others pointing out how tone deaf it was to cry over a luxury of free dining when many people struggle to afford basic groceries.
So I just want to address Vincent here because I think he's not understanding something and nobody's telling him because they're just focused on sending him hate. Vincent, the problem here is there's a huge lack of communication from you. You keep saying they invited you to try the French toast on the house, but that's not true. They wanted you to give them a post in exchange for their free food. Now, in their initial message, they don't explicitly say this, but let's keep reading. Thanks, Dottie, for the receipts. You first tell them that you can't guarantee a post for unpaid collabs. They're not willing to pay you for nothing, so they say, okay, give us your media kit /rates. You say 4K, they say never mind, but please feel free to come in at your own time. Now, to me, that is not an invitation for free food still. But you think it is. You respond with, okay, let me get back to you. Are you still expecting to be comped for?
Memes emerged, parodying his outrage, and the hashtag FrenchToastGate briefly trended among circles of TikTok commentary pages. Vincent attempted to defend himself by posting a follow-up, saying, "The issue wasn't the cost. It was that they invited me, confirmed the date, and then turned me away. My feelings are valid."
What does that make you for not just fucking paying for it?
So this guy made a video mocking me today, and I'm getting a lot of hate comments, which is never cool. But I wanted to clarify what happened and tell the whole story because a lot of people didn't watch the original video and just saw his clips and jumped to a conclusion. I will be looking at my notes because I'm not good at speaking and I don't want to leave out any information. And I do want to say that I was dramatic when I said that it was the worst experience. But what I meant to say is that has never happened to me before in the few years I've worked with brands and companies. So this cafe has been following me for a few weeks, and last week they DM'd me inviting me to try the new French toast on the house, meaning it's free. They did say they really like my content, so I'm really grateful for that. I didn't ask, but they told me to bring a guest. I didn't want to assume that they're going to accommodate my friend, so I asked and they said they couldn't afford a second French toast or a drink. So I said no problem, I'll come in anyways to try that one French toast and the drink. Emphasis on one because a lot of people are saying I went in, asking them to accommodate my friend, but I didn't. So we confirmed the day and time, and I showed up, talked to the barista, and the barista goes to the back to talk to the owner. She gets back to me and says that I should have came yesterday and I missed it. But I showed her the message I had with the woman in charge and I was supposed to be here at that moment. The barista goes back to the kitchen to talk to the owner. And when she gets back, she tells me she can't accommodate me, but she doesn't tell me why. I didn't question it and I just left the cafe. I messaged them when I got home and the woman apologized saying it shouldn't have happened. And to this day, I still don't know why that happened when they're the ones who reached out and invited me. And we had a confirmed day and time. This guy is saying I could have just paid for the toast and the drink. But I think I have the right to be upset that they invited me and asked me to come in for something that would be on the house. When I arrive on the day, they changed their mind. So instead, I just went to another cafe and supported them instead. The issue isn't the cost of the toast or the drink. It's more so the fact that they contacted me first and said it would be on the house and I should bring a guest. When I showed up at the agreed time, they just turned me away. It just sucks that this guy cut clips of my original video and made it seem as if I was begging for a free toast. I think I could have used better wording when I was telling the story, but I still think that I have the right to be upset with the experience.
But the timing was poor and the momentum irreversible. His follow-up was drowned out by duets and stitches mocking his tone, and critics highlighted how his argument deliberately sidestepped the receipts that showed he had tried to negotiate more than he admitted. His initial video was deleted, which served as its own explanation of defeat, leaving only screenshots and reposts to circulate without his control. His defense came across as follows because it ignored the context revealed by receipts and because it looked like damage control rather than accountability. Public sympathy swung toward the cafe, while Vincent's credibility plummeted. What was once a chance to come across as generous and supportive of small businesses now painted him as entitled and manipulative. His attempt to present himself as a victim instead highlighted his sense of superiority and unwillingness to admit fault. Exhibit C illustrates the fragility of influencer credibility. One overreaction, once exposed and mocked, can transform a creator from relatable figure to opportunistic manipulator almost overnight, with their reputation suffering faster than they can delete the evidence. Exhibit D. Just as the dust began to settle, another revelation complicated matters. Brioche NYC was not merely a modest neighborhood cafe struggling to survive, but part of the larger franchise network owned by Three Chords Incorporation, overseen by CEO Sang Pyo Hong. This corporation manages multiple in-house brands, including Semicolon Cafe and Sweet Moments, both of which have franchise locations across the nation. Some industry observers pointed out that Three Chords Incorporation was not just a small consultancy, but a growing powerhouse in the cafe and beverage sector, with resources and experience that far surpassed the image of a single neighborhood shop. This twist raised questions. If Brioche NYC had corporate backing, should they have been more generous in accommodating Vicent, especially when the cost at stake was a single extra French toast and drink? Or does corporate ownership not erase the day-to-day constraints of individual franchise operators who may still face razor-thin margins and budgets? Commenters debated fiercely. Some argued that Vicent's outrage might appear more understandable if he believed he was negotiating with a well-funded, well-connected brand rather than a struggling cafe barely keeping the lights on.
Brioche New York City is not a small New York business. At least I would never use those words to describe a business that is run by a rich Korean man as part of a bigger corporation. Let's look at who the owner of Brioche New York City is. If you go to the 3chordsinc.com and you look at their website, it's basically a premium beverage consultant distributed company that's offering guidance to small businesses, maybe large businesses. However, they do have 3 in-house brands that they operate. One of the notable ones is Semicolon Café, which has been around since 2019 and has multiple franchises across the nation. We have Sweet Moment, which is opened in 2017. There's a location in Little Italy and Soho, maybe even more potentially franchises by now. And then if you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see that Brioche New York City is part of this in-house branding where it's essentially following the identity of Semicolon Cafe's sandwiches. The founder and the owner of Semicolon Cafe is, I'm going to butcher this name, Sung Pyo Hong. He used to be the CEO at 3Chords Inc. Maybe he still is, but essentially he is a rich Korean man. I made a previous video where I said that the danger of labeling something as a small New York business is that you don't actually know who is this business. When you go to K-Town and you find people who work in K-Town and see these businesses, you might notice there is a trend in terms of branding, identity, the location. And the trend is that a lot of these rich Korean men, like Sung Pyo Hong, have the money to basically rinse and repeat so many small businesses in New York City, but purposely hide the fact that they are part of a much larger corporation having franchises, etc. Can they afford to give away free food for content creators? Absolutely, 100%. This is not like the other videos that Daddy, which I now realize that Daddy Snacks.
Others insisted that regardless of corporate ownership, the principle remained clear. Vicent had no right to demand free meals that were never promised, and his reaction was still out of proportion. The discussion extended into broader themes of perception versus reality. Franchise ownership does not always mean deep pockets for every location. Some franchises are locally managed, carrying the risks and responsibilities without direct corporate bailouts. But online audiences are rarely interested in nuance. They prefer villains and heroes, entitlement or justice, good or bad. And in this case, Vicent's reaction was too extreme to be framed as righteous indignation, even in light of the cafe's backing. Exhibit D highlights how internet trials thrive on partial context, and while new details can complicate perceptions and shift certain sympathies, they rarely erase the central critique. In this case, Vicent's disproportionate entitlement remained evident, standing taller than any new revelations about corporate structure or ownership. The fallout was swift and unmistakable. Vicent deleted his videos, went silent on social media, and surrendered control of the narrative. His credibility, while not destroyed, suffered a noticeable decline. Followers questioned his professionalism, fellow creators distanced themselves, and his image shifted from relatable lifestyle influencer to cautionary tale. Meanwhile, Brioche NYC received an unexpected support, with commenters promising to visit, purchase food, and promote the cafe in retaliation against what they perceived as an unjust treatment. The irony is undeniable. In trying to harm the cafe's reputation, Vicent inadvertently elevated it. His credibility cracked, while the cafe's standing improved, at least temporarily. And all of this unfolded over a $5 denial, a cost so small it symbolized the absurd fragility of relationships between influencers and businesses in the social media age. The fallout reads like sentencing in progress. Vincent stripped off sympathy, endures reputational damage, while the Café, once targeted, enjoys solidarity. The punishment was not legal but cultural, delivered not by a judge, but by thousands of voices online. Judges' analysis. This case is a mirror held up to the influencer economy. When creators brand themselves as champions of small businesses yet turn minor inconveniences into accusations, they expose the transactional core of their so-called generosity. Vincent's saga reflects a broader pattern: the monetization of inconvenience, the exaggeration of rejection, and the transformation of every no into content for outrage. Social media platforms reward drama, and Vincent's behavior fit the mold perfectly. The outrage cycle thrives on amplifying trivialities, turning a plate of French toast into a battlefield for clout. Followers become weapons, businesses become scapegoats, and creators become both performers and victims in their own stories. The lesson is sobering. Influencer culture often prioritizes ego over ethics, visibility over responsibility, and spectacle over truth. The Café, though later revealed to have corporate ties, does not escape critique. Its small business framing may have been incomplete. Yet this nuance does not excuse Vincent's entitlement, nor does it erase the broader culture rot this case exposes. The expectation that businesses must pay, whether in meals, money, or deference, or exposure, reflects a wrapped dynamic where visibility is treated as currency, often to the detriment of fairness and respect. The verdict. On the weight of the evidence, the videos, the receipts, the backlash, and the aftermath, the court finds Vincent guilty of inflated entitlement, reckless manipulation of narrative, and exploitation of platform power for personal ego at the expense of a business's reputation. But the jury is not confined to the script. The jury is you. Was Vincent justified in his outrage, or was he overreacting, wielding his following as a weapon against a cafe that dared to say no? Was Brioche NYC a plucky small business standing firm, or a franchise clocked in humility to deflect critique? Drop your verdict in the comments below, because in the court of TikTok, the jury is never silent. And let this case remind us, sometimes the real scandal is not the French toast itself, but the hunger for clout that turns a $5 plate into a $5,000 drama.